Hi, let's look into the meets and bounds type of legal description.
Meets and bounds. The oldest method of determining property location is the meets and bounds system. Dates back to the colonial days, having been used in England. Meets designates distance. Bounds designates direction. Every meets and bounds description has a reference point that is the point of beginning, POB. The meets and bounds description ends at the beginning point, now called the terminus. Monuments are used in the meets and bounds system as fixed objects to establish boundaries. Compass bearings are used to describe the directional movement of boundary lines. Circles equal 360 degrees. Directions for a meets and bounds description rely on the 360-degree circle and describe movements in degrees, minutes, and seconds. Oldest method of land description. The meets and bounds system is the oldest method of land description. It was imported to the original colonies from England. It was the primary system used to survey the 13 colonies and other areas where land was distributed before 1785. As such, many New England properties are identified through the meets and bounds system in Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Some properties in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Texas are also identified using the meets and bounds method. In more recent years, meets and bounds descriptions have sometimes been used with areas that are irregularly sized and or shaped so that the boundaries of the property can be more clearly defined. Meets refers to distance measured in feet, and bounds refers to direction. Meets refers to distance measured in feet, bounds refers to direction. Meets and bounds are the boundaries of property as identified by natural landmarks and measured as straight runs or distance between 2 points. Point of beginning. Surveys using the meets and bounds system begin with reference point called a point of beginning, POB. The POB will be identified in the meets and bounds survey through a description of the monument marking the beginning point. Common phrasing referring to the point of beginning would be beginning at the point from which the ... Monuments. Monuments are fixed objects used to establish boundaries. Monuments act as the boundaries of property and often are landmarks such as rivers, streams, roads, or man-made objects such as stakes or markers. Common phrases referring to boundaries would include in the center of the highway, or to a large oak tree, or an iron stake has been placed. Compass bearings. Compass bearings are used to describe the direction of boundary lines. In lieu of following from one natural landmark or highway to another, the meets and bounds method describes the movement of boundary lines via the use of compass directions, following the compass directional needle. Circles equal 360 degrees. The point of beginning and all subsequent boundary points marking a turn within the legal description or a property corner are each considered to be centered within a circle. And circles measure 360 degrees. Directions are given in degrees and broken down even smaller than a degree by describing the direction to minutes and seconds. For example, north 45 degrees, 25 minutes, 20 seconds east. Following is an example of an existing meets and bounds legal description for 9320 Duck Harbor Road in Plymouth, Michigan. Please take time to read it. Notice in the previous example the use of the point of beginning referring to a post as a beginning landmark, and also notice references to highways. Notice the directional use of compass points of degrees and minutes, and notice the distance referred measured in feet. And notice that the descriptions returns to the point of beginning as the terminus or endpoint. So how does compass bearings work? It begins with an identified corner monument serving as a benchmark, marking the point of beginning. The description then gives distance, direction, and various boundary descriptions as if one were walking the bounds, pacing off the distance to the next corner where there is a change of direction. The direction is described by a compass bearing, which is the direction north or south, followed by a degree measured out of 90 degrees, and another direction, west or east. It stops at 90 as the farthest degree noted. From north to the right meets east, or from south to the right meets the same east point. So 90 degrees is the largest measurement used. For example, such a bearing might be listed as north 45 degrees, 25 minutes, 20 seconds east, which equals north 45 degrees, 25 minutes, 20 seconds east. One is just shorthand. In addition to knowing the basic vocabulary and elements of a meets and bounds legal description, licensees also need to know how to plot a meets and bounds descriptor in a circle. Plotting a directional point. To work with a circle in the meets and bounds system, the circle is divided into 4 quadrants. North is at the top point, south is at the bottom point, west is at the left point, and east is at the right point, just as you would expect. The north and south line through the circle is called the primary reference line. The point of beginning will either be at the north or the south point. Therefore, every named starting point will start with either an N representing north or an S representing south. Here's an example. The point of beginning for north 45 east is the north point indicated by the N in the description. 45 degrees in the description tells the reader to move 45 degrees away from the north point. The E in the description tells the reader to move 45 degrees away from the north point, going towards the east. The opposite point can quickly be determined from a metes and bounds description. The opposite of north 45 east is south 45 west. This fact can easily be seen from a visual example of the 2 points plotted on the circle. However, the opposite point can easily be determined without actually plotting anything if you follow these simple rules. Opposite of north is south, opposite of south is north. The number remains the same, opposite of east is west, and vice versa. Following this process, the opposite of north 45 east is south 45 west. The descriptions may also be written out with full word descriptors. North 45 degrees west. Legal description written practice. Write out a shortened version of each legal description. First you have north 60 degrees west, and then you have south 75 degrees west, and finally south 89 degrees east. And they're shown here in longhand, and you should be able to write that in shorthand version. In doing so, north 60 degrees west, written out longhand, would be shown in shorthand as simply the letter N and then the 60 with the degree symbol and the letter west, or W for west. The second one would be S75 with the degree symbol and also the W for west. And then finally we have just the S for south, 89 in numeric instead of written out with the degree symbol, and then east would be represented with an E. Opposite directional point practice. What is the opposite of these points? Number 1, north 60 degrees west. 2, south 75 degrees west. And 3, south 89 degrees east. What is the opposite of these points? Opposite of north 60 degrees west is south 60 degrees east. Opposite of south 75 degrees west is north 75 degrees east. And opposite of south 89 degrees east is north 89 degrees west. Preparing for exams related to metes and bounds survey can be a bit intimidating if you over-focus on the written legal descriptions using this type of method. Many descriptions are written with abbreviations in Old English. Instead, focus on the overall process of how the descriptions are created. That basically means knowing the vocabulary connected with the process. And be sure to understand how to find the opposite point on a compass. So as far as the meets and bounds survey system is concerned, if you know definitions for things like monuments and point of beginning and the concept of degrees and minutes and seconds, plus being able to do the process of finding the opposite point on a compass and plotting that beginning point and finding the opposite point, you should be good to go with this learning topic.